Stop. Just for a second. I know you were just scrolling through videos, the algorithm threw you in here, and maybe the first thing that crossed your mind was, great, another video about how to get girls. But I need you to give me 2 minutes before you decide to leave. Because what I'm going to talk about today is not about pickup lines, not about what to say to a woman, not about playing games. It's about something way more important than any of that. It's about who you already are, and who you probably haven't seen clearly yet. I'm a coach specializing in female psychology, and over the years I've sat across from hundreds of women who describe the men who truly changed their lives. Not the most attractive ones, not the wealthiest ones, the ones who stayed. And there is a pattern so clear, so consistent, that I decided to turn it into content that could actually reach the men who need to hear it. Men who are doing everything right in life, but who haven't yet learned how to communicate the value they carry. I'm going to be real with you because that's just who I am. I was the woman who ignored incredible men. Gentle, present, genuine men. And I chased others who weren't worth half of what those men were. But back then, I didn't understand why. Now I do. And that understanding is exactly what's going to shift after this video. In this video, I'm going to show you 10 signs that prove you are a genuinely attractive man. Not in the shallow sense of the word, but in the sense that every woman recognizes deep in her gut, even when she can't put it into words. And sign number 7 is the one I've never seen anyone explain properly. It's the quietest and the most powerful one on this list. Stay with me until we get there. If you've ever felt like you had everything it takes to connect with someone but something invisible kept getting in the way, something you couldn't quite identify, drop "I feel this" in the comments right now. I want to see how many of you I'm actually reaching. You don't need anyone's approval to feel whole. And I need to really unpack this because the way I just said it makes it sound easy, obvious even. But in practice, it's one of the hardest things any human being can actually develop, because we were raised inside a system that from childhood rewarded seeking approval. In school, you raised your hand and waited for the teacher to say, "Good job." At work, you submitted a project and watched your boss's face for a reaction. With your family, you made a decision and scanned everyone's response before you felt safe with your own choice. That approval-seeking engine is old, it runs deep, and it follows you all the way into the moment you're standing in front of a woman you're attracted to. And that's where it explodes. You start monitoring her every reaction. Every second she takes to reply to a message becomes data you're analyzing. Every expression on her face during a conversation becomes a score you're keeping to see whether you're doing well. And she feels all of it, even without you saying a single word. A woman senses a man's need for approval like a bad smell in the room. She can't name exactly what it is, but she knows something is off. On the other hand, when a man genuinely doesn't need you to validate every step he takes, when he says what he thinks even if you disagree, when he makes his own choices calmly, even when no one around him understands them, something automatic happens, something instinctive. The woman starts wanting to earn his attention, because suddenly the approval that matters is his, not the other way around. Tell me something in the comments. In what situation do you catch yourself seeking approval the most? At work, with your family, with women? Be honest, because this is the starting point for everything. And that independence creates a powerful side effect that shows up in your entire body before you even open your mouth. That's what sign 2 is about, and most people have never stopped to think about this. You have presence, and I want you to understand that presence is not volume. It's not size. It's not over-the-top charisma. It's not that owning the room thing that Hollywood movies teach. Presence is much quieter than that. Presence is when you walk into a place and people notice, not because you shouted or did something flashy, but because your nervous system is regulated, because when you arrive, you're not scanning the room looking for something, because you're not checking your phone in the first 30 seconds out of insecurity, because you sit down and you're comfortable there, in that space, with those people, without needing to fill the silence with performance. I remember a client of mine, a beautiful, successful woman, who described the man she fell in love with like this. She said, "He walked into the restaurant, looked at me, and I felt that he was completely here, not in the past, not in the future, right here." That is presence. It's full attention radiating from the body. Open shoulders, not because someone told you to stand up straight, but because you're not carrying the weight of other people's judgment on them. Slow steps, not as an affectation, but because you're not running from anything. Direct eye contact, not aggressive, just present. A smile that shows up when there's a real reason for it, not the nervous smile people plaster on their faces when they want a situation to feel less tense. That is the language the female body decodes before a single word is ever spoken. Have you ever met someone like that? Someone who had that thing that shifted the energy in a room just by walking in? Tell me how that experience felt. I genuinely love reading these stories. That presence speaks, but what you do with your voice, with your words, with the moments of silence, is what's going to determine sign 3. And this is where most men waste one of the most powerful tools they have. You talk less, and you actually listen. And I need to separate listening from hearing, because they are completely different things. Hearing is what your ears do automatically. Listening is a deliberate act. It's you deciding that the person in front of you matters more than the thought that's trying to come out of your mouth. In an era where everyone is just waiting for their turn to talk, where everyone has half their attention on their phone, and the other half composing the next clever thing to say, the man who sits across from a woman and is simply present, processing every word she says, remembering details, asking questions that show he was actually paying attention, that man becomes memorable in a way that goes far beyond his physical appearance. I had a student in my program who told me she knew she was with the right man when, at dinner, he referenced something she had mentioned in passing 3 weeks earlier. A small thing, the name of a book she wanted to read. He had written it down, not as a strategy, because he genuinely cared. She told me that in that moment she felt, for the first time in her life, what it was like to be truly seen. And that, my friend, is not a small thing. Being seen is a fundamental human need, and the man who offers that naturally holds something in his hands that no amount of money in the world can buy. What's your biggest challenge when it comes to listening? Do you catch yourself thinking about your response while the other person is still talking? Or do you get easily distracted? Drop it in the comments. This one is more common than people realize, and it deserves an honest conversation. While you're listening, your entire body is sending a parallel signal that either reinforces or destroys everything your words are trying to communicate. That's sign 4. And it's where so much falls apart without you even realizing it. Your body language tells the real story, not the one you're trying to tell. There's a well-known study by psychologist Albert Mehrabian that showed that in interpersonal communication, 55% of the message is transmitted through body language, 38% through tone of voice, and only 7% through the actual words spoken. 7%. That means you could say the most brilliant things in the world. You could have read every book on attraction ever written. You could have memorized all the perfect lines. And if your body is saying something different, the woman is going to believe your body. Every time. The body doesn't know how to lie the way the mouth does. So what does an attractive man's body communicate? He doesn't cross his arms when he feels challenged. Not because he's consciously keeping them open, but because he's not defending himself from anything. He doesn't lean his entire body forward with anxiety when he's talking to someone he's interested in. He doesn't repeatedly touch his face, doesn't rub his hands together, doesn't bounce his leg, not because he consciously controlled those things, but because his nervous system is regulated. And something I observe constantly in my consultations is that women describe the touch of a confident man as completely different from the touch of an anxious one. The confident man touches with intention, with calm, without asking permission through the gesture, without pulling back before finishing. Touch speaks as loudly as eye contact, and both reveal exactly what's going on inside. What body behavior do you think gives you away when you're nervous? Bouncing your leg, laughing when it's unnecessary, reaching for your phone? Drop it in the comments. It's more revealing than you think. But none of that matters if there's a constant emotional fire burning inside you, because that fire eventually leaks out. And that's exactly what sign 5 is going to show you, with a depth that most content never even gets close to. You have emotional control, and that is completely different from being cold or indifferent. I need to create some space here to talk about a confusion I see constantly, which is the man who tries to seem controlled but is actually just emotionally shut down, distant, completely inaccessible. That's not control, that's suppression. And suppression eventually explodes, always at the wrong moment, always in a disproportionate way. Real emotional control is the ability to feel everything, the anger, the fear, the insecurity, the rejection, and not let those feelings dictate your behavior impulsively. It's you receiving a cold message from a woman you care about and being able to take a breath before responding, or choosing not to respond in that moment. It's you feeling jealousy and being able to process that inside yourself before pouring it onto her. It's you hearing a no and being able to walk away with your head up, without begging, without attacking, without making a dramatic exit. I've worked with women who ended relationships with men they deeply loved simply because they couldn't take the roller coaster anymore. The jealousy that became control, the insecurity that became constant demands, the anxiety that needed endless reassurance. They didn't want to leave. They ran out of energy. On the other hand, every single woman who ever described to me the man she fell most deeply in love with used some version of the same phrase. I felt safe with him, emotionally safe, that he wasn't going to explode, that he wasn't going to storm out in a tantrum, that he was going to handle whatever life threw at them without pulling her into his chaos. Can I be honest about something? For a long time, I confused an emotionally controlled man with a man who had no feelings. I thought coldness was strength. It took me years to understand that those two things are opposites. The emotionally mature man feels everything and still chooses how he acts. That is what real strength looks like. What situation makes you lose emotional control the most? Jealousy, rejection, criticism? Answer honestly in the comments, because recognizing it is the first real step. That level of emotional maturity doesn't appear out of nowhere. It's born from something that needs to exist in your life before any woman ever enters it. And that is exactly sign 6. You have a life that exists and thrives completely independent of any relationship. Projects, friendships, purpose, routine, dreams. A life that doesn't need a woman in it to make sense. And I know that sounds obvious when I say it out loud, but the number of men who unconsciously organize their entire lives around the woman they're trying to pursue, or the one they've already won over, is enormous. They skip the gym because she became available during that time slot. They stop hanging out with their friends because she mentioned she doesn't love when he goes out. They abandon personal projects because the relationship consumes all their time and energy. They change their opinions about movies, music, places, because she prefers a different style. And all of that is done with the best intentions, the intention to please, to be present, to show her that she matters. But the effect is the opposite, because what a woman feels when she realizes the man beside her has nothing in his life that exists outside of her is not gratitude. It's pressure. It's an enormous pressure to be enough for someone's entire existence, and no person can carry that weight indefinitely. A woman who's attracted to a man wants to step into his life, not be his entire life. She wants to admire what he's built, wants to be part of something that was already happening, wants to feel that he chose to have her there because he wanted her there, not because he needed someone to fill a void. A man with purpose is magnetically different. There's a lightness in him that a man who revolves around someone else can never have. Is there something in your life that is completely yours? A project? A passion? A goal that exists regardless of any relationship? Tell me what it is in the comments. I genuinely want to know. Now, we've arrived at the sign I promised you from the very beginning. Number 7. The one women recognize in their body before they recognize it in their mind. I've never talked about this with this level of depth in any video. Pay attention. You radiate calm. And I need time here because this sign deserves more than a quick explanation. I'm going to tell you something I've never shared publicly. During a very specific period of my life, after a relationship that left me completely drained, I went to therapy twice a week for almost 2 years. And during one of those sessions, my therapist asked me to describe the men I had truly loved throughout my life. Not the ones I found attractive, not the ones who treated me well on the surface, but the ones who actually left a mark. And when I made that list and looked at it, I noticed something that genuinely shocked me. Every single one of them had something in common that I had never been able to name before. They were all people who seemed completely at ease just existing, who didn't need the environment around them to be under control in order to feel secure, who could sit in a silence without needing to fill it, who received bad news and processed it before reacting, who didn't spiral when things didn't go as planned. My therapist looked at me and said something I have never forgotten. You fall for regulated nervous systems. And it was in that moment that I understood that attraction, at its deepest level, is neurobiological. A woman's nervous system reads a man's nervous system in real time. When his is anxious, hers responds with alert. When his is in chaos, hers goes into defense mode. But when his is calm, not artificially calm, not the calm of someone who's holding themselves together by a thread, but the calm of someone who is genuinely at peace with themselves, her nervous system relaxes in a deep, automatic way that she cannot rationally control. That relaxation is what she calls, "I feel safe with him." And safety, in female psychology, is the foundation of every form of attraction that actually lasts. It took me years to understand that what I was looking for in relationships wasn't excitement. It was regulation. It was a man whose nervous system told mine that I could finally rest. And when I found that, I understood why everything before had been so exhausting. Did this sign hit differently than the others? I genuinely want to know what you felt reading this. Tell me in your own words in the comments. I mean it. That calm has a root. It doesn't happen by accident. It's born from a daily discipline that very few people practice with real consistency, and that is sign 8. You take care of yourself with the seriousness of someone who deeply respects who they are. And the difference between taking care of yourself out of vanity versus taking care of yourself out of self-respect is enormous, and women feel that difference intuitively. The man who goes to the gym because he wants to look good in photos carries a completely different energy than the man who goes to the gym because he understands that his body is the first home he will ever live in for the rest of his life. The man who watches what he eats because he wants to slim down for a night out carries a completely different energy than the man who watches what he eats because he understands that his energy, his focus, and his mental clarity all depend on the fuel he puts in his body. Taking care of yourself isn't just gym and diet, it's quality sleep, because a man who doesn't sleep cannot regulate his emotions, and we've already talked about what that costs. It's hygiene that's not just the bare minimum out of obligation, but is genuinely cared for because you understand that details communicate the level of attention you give to things. It's a wardrobe that doesn't have to be expensive or designer, but is clean, fits well, and shows that you thought about yourself before you walked out the door. It's having a routine, any routine, that puts your own well-being first before anything external. One of my students once said something to me that I've used ever since. When I realized he took less care of himself than he asked me to take care of him, that was the end. The man who doesn't take care of himself is asking someone else to carry the responsibility for his well-being. And that is a weight no woman should have to carry, and no man should ever transfer. Tell me about your self-care routine. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be simple. What do you do for yourself every day or every week? Drop it in the comments. That care creates a pattern, and pattern creates positive predictability, and positive predictability is the heart of sign 9, which the women in my world describe as a luxury that barely exists anymore. You are consistent. That small word carries a weight that goes far beyond what it looks like on the surface. Consistency isn't just doing what you said you were going to do. It's being the same man regardless of who's watching. It's being the same person on Monday at 6 a.m. that you are on Saturday night. It's being the same when things are going great, and when everything is falling apart. It's being the same in the first conversation that you are 12 months into a relationship. We live in an era of chronic inconsistency. Men who send passionate messages and then disappear for 3 days. Who make plans and cancel last minute with a vague excuse. Who are present and intense one week and distant and monosyllabic the next. Who say one thing on Friday and do the opposite on Monday. This pattern, which psychology actually has a name for, creates a state of constant alertness in a relationship. The woman never knows which version of the man is going to show up, and that state of alertness, even when it generates short-term excitement, is devastating to any possibility of a real bond. On the other hand, when a woman realizes she can predict a man's behavior in the best possible way, that he's going to show up when he said he would, that he's going to respond when he said he'd respond, that he's going to be the same person tomorrow that he was yesterday, something deep inside her relaxes. She stops monitoring, stops analyzing, stops asking herself what's going on. And in that relaxation, a kind of trust is born that becomes the foundation of every attraction that genuinely lasts. I'll be honest. I've been with inconsistent men thinking that the excitement of not knowing what was coming next was attraction. It took me a while to understand that what I was calling butterflies was actually anxiety. And anxiety is not love. It's just anxiety. Do you see yourself as consistent? Or do you feel like this is an area you still need to work on? Tell me in the comments without any judgment. This is one of the hardest ones to develop, and it deserves an open conversation. And now we arrive at sign 10, the one that closes the loop, the one that transforms everything we've been building into something that goes far beyond just getting the girl, and enters the territory of something very few people actually understand. You don't chase. You exist with so much fullness that attraction naturally comes to you. And I know that sounds like something off a motivational poster, But let me explain what's underneath it, because there's a lot going on. A man who chases excessively isn't being passionate. He's communicating scarcity. He's saying, with every unanswered message he sends, with every plan he rearranges to please her, with every argument he backs down from when he knew he was right, that his time isn't worth that much, that his opinion is negotiable, that his presence can be guaranteed at any cost. And a woman reads that, not because she's cruel, but because the human brain constantly and automatically evaluates value in everyone, all the time. When a man's perceived value drops, the attraction disappears with it. Not because she decided that, because it's biological. The man who doesn't chase is not the man who plays games, who disappears on purpose, who sends calculated ghosting. That's manipulation, and it's completely different. The man who doesn't chase is the man who genuinely has things in his life that matter. Who, when you don't respond to his message, keeps moving through his day because his day was already full of meaning before you appeared in it. Who, when you cancel plans, goes out with his friends anyway, because his life didn't stop waiting for your confirmation. That man, when he chooses to be with you, makes you feel chosen. Not because you were the only option available, but because you were the one he wanted. And that difference changes everything. Before I wrap up, I need to say something with every bit of sincerity I have. These 10 signs are not a to-do list you're going to execute. They're not techniques you apply overnight and suddenly become a different person. They are a portrait of a man who is in a genuine process of building himself. And that process is slow. It's not linear. It has setbacks. There will be days where you lose emotional control, even after months of working on it. There will be days where you seek approval, even knowing you don't need it. That's not failure. That's being human. What separates the man who grows from the man who stays stuck isn't the absence of setbacks. It's the decision to keep going even after them. I know it's easier for me to say this from where I'm standing than it is to actually live it every single day, but I have watched men transform their lives through this work. I have heard women tell me they found exactly this kind of man and never wanted to leave. This is real. You can be this. If this video reached you in a different way, if any specific sign made you stop and think, hit the like button right now. Not for the algorithm, but to tell me that I should keep bringing content with this level of depth. And if you're not subscribed yet, do that now, because every single week I bring real female psychology. No fluff, no games, no sugarcoating. Now tell me, which of the 10 signs hit deepest for you? And which one do you feel you need to work on the most? I want to read every single comment because you teach me just as much as I teach you. And if you want me to make a full video on any one of these signs specifically, drop it in the comments and I'll make it a priority. Your female psychology coach, and I believe with everything I have that the most attractive version of you isn't somewhere in a distant future after you've changed everything. He's in the next choice you make. The next time you hold back an impulsive reaction. The next time you choose to listen instead of speak. The next time you show up when you said you would. He's being built right now, in this process, in this video, in this moment. I'll see you in the next one.